The topic of today's event is to talk about Microsoft licensing updates in January. And there aren't many. I must say it's almost, with only one exception, almost a very dull month. Usually we are excited when there are significant changes to licensing, for example, the introduction of Copilot in November or the changes to Microsoft SQL Server licensing in October 2022. This time it's almost quiet, but not entirely quiet. But let's have a look, just a quick look at what's going on in Microsoft licensing in January 2024. You can open this page yourselves. It's microsoft.com/licensing/terms. And there you can find one of the pages that is called Summary of Changes. And you can browse those changes yourself. What you can notice is most of it is changes to terms, some reshuffle of Azure services. Those of you who are in Dynamics, by the way, if you are interested in us talking more about Dynamics 365, because for us it's not the core product. Across our client base, maybe 5% use Dynamics 365, and it's a very, very niche product. If you would like us to cover Dynamics updates in more details, please let us know in the comments or via an email or a DM, and we will start covering Dynamics updates. Otherwise, we usually stick to what's most interesting to the wider range of clients and organizations. There are some changes to, again, in terms of GitHub, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Defender had a little bit of a reshuffle, but what's the most important update this time is that if you look how it's written, Microsoft 365 added Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 to EES availability table. So what does it mean? It means that Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 is finally available to education clients. So if you are in education, if your clients, if you're a consultant are in education, this is good news. Good news for the education customers. And let's have a look at what we currently can do with Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 as it stands in January 2024. So the plans to which Copilot can be added, it's an additional license, are Microsoft 365 E3, E5, now A3 and A5, which are academic plans, equivalent to E3 and E5. So we have two more plans. Microsoft Business plans still don't have Copilot eligibility. You can't have Copilot even if you have 300 licenses on Microsoft Business plans. There is a 300 minimum users per tenant, not per company, per tenant. It was recently clarified. For example, we dealt recently with a client where they are eligible by the number of their users. But because they're split into tenants, which are smaller than 300 users, they can't have Copilot. So that's 300 users per tenant. It's a clarification. And for everybody, including academics, including biggest enterprises with fantastic discounts on enterprise agreement, the price is flat. It's $30 or about 23, 24 UK pounds per user per month, which is it's a substantial investment. Copilot alone is exactly 108,000 per year with the minimum of 300 licenses. And if you add that, for example, if you're not yet on E3, so at least you need to add E3, that easily goes up to 300K per year. Which, for example, my company can afford, but we probably will not buy it for that kind of money. We'll wait until limits are decreased and something is improved in that regard. And majorly, this is what we want from Microsoft to happen ASAP. And there's a lot of discontent as well from schools and small educational institutions, exactly similar to concerns expressed previously by small businesses, that only massive private schools are able to afford such an investment. The clients want Microsoft to make it available in CSP. It's not yet. We want Microsoft to reduce the minimums, and we all want Microsoft, well, not all of us, those of us who are with business plans obviously want it to be available for Microsoft 365 business plans, standard and premium. It was promised. It didn't happen. Those plans were even listed as eligible in November, and then Microsoft in December removed them because they just couldn't provide the technical capability for those plans. So that's where we are. That's where we want to be. When is it going to happen? I can't share all I know because some things are strict NDA, but there are unverified rumors, and please take it as I say it right now, unverified rumors, although from trusted sources, that Microsoft is trying with all the effort they can afford to make those changes already in the first quarter of 2024. Hopefully, because usually biggest changes happen on the 1st of April and on the 1st of October each year. Hopefully, we will see those changes in April. But I wouldn't keep high hopes about it, because there are alternative rumors that it may not even happen until 2025. So we can only hope. There's no particular set date for those changes. The other update, which I didn't put here, is another, I wouldn't say rumor, because Microsoft almost openly announced that they want enterprise agreement to go in 2 years from now. So in 2026, they want to completely get rid of enterprise agreement. I have massive doubts about it, because they've been trying to get rid of the enterprise agreement infrastructure since about 2012, I think, when they introduced MPSA as an EA killer. They introduced CSP a few years ago as an EA killer. EA is still here. It's still here. I guess we need a special video to discuss what will happen and why Microsoft is doing this. But if you have any questions right now, please ask them in the chat. Let's discuss this particular subject of enterprise agreements and Microsoft potentially canceling the entire enterprise agreement program. It's a controversial topic. And again, I have serious doubts that they will achieve that goal in 2 years. Maybe later, maybe. But where are they going to migrate it? Is it going to be MCA, Microsoft Customer Agreement? Maybe. But the differences between those two programs are so substantial, and large enterprise customers won't like it, because as it stands now, enterprise agreement has programmatic discounts at 4 different price levels, depending on the size of the organization. CSP doesn't have it. CSP has a flat price list across all the company sizes, and therefore getting a discount will require a thorough negotiation, unless they introduce levels into CSP, which is currently not the case. It's going to be fun. Frequently asked questions. Windows Server licensing per virtual machine. Again, this is in the pipeline. I don't want to make promises like it's going to be released next week. Soon. We want to release a video that clarifies that one particular question. We have a few already on the channel, but some of them are out of date. So let me give you a very quick update so you are completely on the same page and you understand what's going on with this with the server licensing per virtual machine. Without slides, let's just look at my face here. First point, Windows Server, if it's purchased with software assurance, and all the client access licenses are also purchased with software assurance, so everything, the whole licensing package, you may license it per virtual machine. Since about October 2022, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe later. I don't now. Now I don't remember. It was long ago when Microsoft allowed it. The only number you need to remember now is the requirement of the licensing requirement per virtual machine is 8 core licenses minimum. So if you have a 4-core VM, it still requires 8 core licenses, single core licenses, or 4 2-core packs. That's the only number you need to remember. So in addition to the requirement for all the licenses to be on subscription or with software assurance, that is the only number, at least 8 cores per virtual machine, and that's it. The interesting questions begin when you start thinking about, okay, I have a legacy VMware environment where I licensed everything according to the old rules with, say, Windows Server 2019 licenses, data center. Now I want to deploy Windows Server 2022 machines, a few virtual machines, into that cluster. VMware, again, that is very important. OKVM, anything that is not Hyper-V. Then in that case, may I license only those virtual machines with per core licenses? So for a long time, it's been a consensus. As far as I'm concerned, there's no real clarification to that. But so far it works. And the opinion is, yes, you may. And even the opinion of people who are very close to Microsoft, yes, you may keep the old VMs licensed with those data center licenses of the previous version without a say. And if you start dropping in Windows Server 2022 virtual machines, you can license those new virtual machines per virtual machine, thus having a kind of a mixed licensing environment with the legacy machines and legacy licenses, and coexisting with recent version virtual machines with the new per virtual machine licensing. And that is substantially cheaper, because otherwise you would have to relicense every host with a newer, the most current Windows Server license version, repurchase it all. However, again, there's a catch, because if you want to use those virtual machines, all your client access licenses have to be with software assurance. For those who are on an enterprise agreement, this is not a problem at all. I mean, you have access to the most recent versions with software assurance, so it's not a problem. So it's more of a problem for companies who either micromanage licenses, who are not enterprise agreement clients. So please pay attention to that. You can't just license 2 VMs and forget about that your client access licenses must be with a say or on a subscription. And if they're currently not any of those 2 types, you just have perpetual client access licenses, it's still a substantial cost to upgrade to Windows Server 2022. So that is important. And that, by the way, relates to regular Windows Server CALs and remote desktop CALs. And those who are on Microsoft 365 plans, like E3, E5, those plans that include Windows Server CAL equivalency, again, it's not a problem. See, there's another scenario here. Not an enterprise agreement client with, say, E3 licenses that include Windows Server CAL equivalency, then you can deploy those 2 virtual machines, new virtual 1, 2, 3, whatever quantity of new virtual machines to that VMware cluster, and just license them per VM and forget about CALs, because all your users are already licensed via E3 or E5, whatever other Microsoft plan, 365 plan with Windows Server CAL equivalency. Excuse me for repeating this, but we must be very precise in licensing. You can't be no precise. You can't be half pregnant. It's a very precise science. Fun begins. Fun continues when you start thinking about, I want to deploy a new VMware cluster. Can I license every machine per VM? Yeah, absolutely. You just license everything per VM. Now imagine you have a cluster with powerful 48 core hosts, 3 of them, and most of your virtual machines are Linux, and then you need a few Windows Server virtual machines. Of course, instead of licensing every host in that cluster with Windows Server Data Center for all those 48 cores in each host, if you deploy, say, 5 virtual machines less than 8 cores, you only need 40 cores. Maybe of Windows Server Standard, by the way, if you deploy Windows Server Standard virtual machines. That is a fraction of the cost, about 5%, even less. That's a good cost-saving exercise. But the next layer of complexity is when that cluster is built with hosts running Hyper-V. Because in that case, you must license every host still at the host level. So that's why we need a dedicated video that will describe all such scenarios and in more detail. Because again, there are options. You can either go with Windows Server Data Center on each host, the old licensing, traditional licensing program, or you may deploy those hosts. Still, Hyper-V will still work using Windows Server Standard, which is cheaper, which would cover each host for 2 virtual machines. And then you only will need to license the surplus of those virtual machines per VM, per host. Fun. How do you calculate that? It's not easy. Again, if you opt for that licensing program, even in that scenario, it will cost you less than traditional licensing models. However, on the other hand, you must remember that we're talking about ongoing costs versus potentially just buying perpetual licenses. Is there a universal answer to what licensing program is cheaper for you? Nope. Each scenario, sometimes even each cluster, must be assessed separately, and commercial options should be compared not just as a point in time, but also in a 3 to 5 years perspective. Because obviously subscription costs accumulate over the period. So we've come to the end of this licensing update. I want to remind you, by those who joined just now, the most important update in January is this. Sorry. This. That Microsoft 365 Copilot is now available to academic clients, but still the minimum of 300 users and the price of $30 per user per month persists for these plans as well. There are no additional discounts or benefits for academics yet. And on that note, thank you for being with us today. And please come back to our next live events, which you can always see if you go to our channel's homepage. You can see what are the upcoming live events on our channel. Thank you very much. Take care. Happy New Year, everybody, and smile.